Yo guys, Coach Theo here on Common Sense. Charlie Kirk has been shot dead at an event he hosted in Utah, leaving a wife and two little kids, a little boy and a little girl behind at the age of 31, 1 year younger than me. Crazy to think about, and a terrible tragedy, of course. A subscriber asked me if I can make a video about it, and it's not a typical thing I would comment on, but as I was hit with these news, some things came up that I think are useful and important to share around it. So I've never followed Charlie Kirk super closely because he came around, or at least became big on the scene, when I had already stopped following anything news or politics too closely. But my impression is that he was a conservative Christian man that I would tend to agree with on most things, I'm pretty sure, that stood for the truth and what's right and actively fought for it. You know, lots of people these days, they love to have the good opinions, think that they're doing something by sitting at home or behind the screen having the opinion, but this is someone that actually went out to fight for it, right? To go places, to make his voice heard, but also allow for opposing views to challenge him so that they get heard. Put it out, all out there, right? Fighting the fight like this. And my message with a video like this will mainly be a reminder that this is first and foremost a spiritual battle. Good versus evil, right versus wrong. Not right wing versus left wing, or Christian versus non-Christian and so on. Because that's what a lot of people are gonna make out of this, right? Oh, this was an attack on Christian, conservative, Republican, right wing, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that there's not any truth to that, but we have to remember these are man-made, made-up divisions. We're all people, we're all human beings, and the people in power, this is what they want. They want us to identify with a group and identify an enemy group so that we are too busy fighting each other instead of looking at the true enemy, right? I'm someone that used to identify as very, very right-wing, and I used to follow the news and politics very, very closely. These days I do not identify with any sort of wing. You know, left wing or right wing, well, I'm chicken wing. I see through these fucking bullshit made up divisions among people now, finally. And I'm gonna tell you some stories to really make my point here before we circle back to the case of Charlie Kirk. So I used to have these views, right, but not always, not since I was born. I was born and I lived my life, and I was brought up with an autistic brother, which it was a very tricky situation. I'm someone with childhood trauma, difficult start to life like that, not the best relationship to my family or anything like that, right? And I go to school, and I am someone that's been diagnosed with ADHD, something that I don't give too much credit to, but you know, I started out having a very easy time in school, you know, seeing myself as a gifted person, only to suddenly have lots of troubles in school, okay? Pretty much school felt stupid, like I'm getting treated as if I'm the stupid one, and we need medication and all these emergency meetings so that Theo can handle this school, when it was actually the school that was way too stupid for me, you know. So I was lost, I didn't know what to do in life. Like, I had a rocky start like that when it came to school, and everything just felt weird. I didn't feel like I fit in society on any level, right? So after high school, you know, I just drifted about, had some little job here and there, but never a happy guy, right? And then suddenly, I've never been into politics much at all. If anything, I was like a liberal, like in the European sense, classical liberal, the more right-wing, the kind of, non-aggression principle, right? But I've never cared much for politics. Then suddenly, for whatever reason, I read a news article when there's this woman going on and on about white men in a very harsh and angry way. And I was so shocked at seeing this, because all I ever heard was that racism and sexism, that's bad, that's wrong, right? She can write this in one of the biggest newspapers, and it's like, what? This seems upside down. Then, of course, as I started now getting into this, I learned that, okay, there's this kind of neo-Marxist ideology when you can only be racist towards some people and only sexist towards some people. It's about structures, power structures and hierarchies, and blah, 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 blah. But it started out with me then seeing that, hey, because so many people that I went to school with and stuff, like, identify with this, like, white men hate shit. And of course, I didn't think that they actually hate white men. I think they must have been influenced by these. I think so. At first, I start out, that's kind of how I want to, you know, meet this, that it's the ideas, the politicians that spread them, the journalists and the ideology itself. That's, I remember posting on my private Facebook stuff, you know, that's kind of like, hey, you know, okay, cool that you care about equality and stuff, but this is actually not good for all of these reasons. And I got so attacked by this. You know, many people removed me as friend on Facebook, and that was quite shocking back in the day. But so I kept going down this rabbit hole that, you know, I'm getting angrier and angrier because, of course, I am a white man, something I never identified with too much. But I get told that I'm the problem and that I'm privileged all the time in all these ways. And I felt nothing but the opposite in my life, the way I started. That, yeah, okay, materially, I was kind of spoiled, privileged. Nothing has to do with my skin color or being a man, though. It's about being born to a like upper middle class family in Sweden, right? But yeah, specifically as a man, I definitely didn't feel. I have always felt like girls had advantages on me, as in, yeah, you know, I could attract some girls and be with some girls, but I always felt, you know, to be quite frank, I was a bit simpy back in the day. I felt like girls could control. I had been quite mean to me, you know, led me on, appreciate, like the attention and send mixed signals. So all of this, it made me more and more angry, right? I already felt not happy in my life, and now I get told I'm the lucky one, I'm the privileged one, when I feel, if anything, like the opposite. And it starts out, when you try to understand all of this, it starts out like, okay, the people in power, the politicians, the journalists, the other, you know, people in institutes and that has sort of indoctrinated the people with this. But the further you go down the rabbit hole, like you're gonna end up identifying with, now, I'm a white man that's right wing, and these the women, the immigrants, you know, the immigration situation in Sweden, right? Yeah, the left-wing people, they are my enemies, right? I'm going to start hating these people. And how I know that all this hatred has nothing to do with so-called racism or sexism or anything like that. Those are just specific forms of hate. And when you have hate, fear, anger within like that, you're just looking for something to blame. And I remember I was a rageaholic in the sense that I got into this large feminist Facebook group, not just feminism, but that kind of, you know, super left-wing, insane ideas. I would just go in this group and read and just sit and be so fucking angry. I really just found something for the pain and hurt and fear I have within. I found an outlet when I feel justified in being angry at these people, right? And so even as you notice that, okay, I actually have resentment, at least, towards women now and immigrants and that, still you know that, but I do, you know, care for women, and like, yeah, I think it's all wrong with this immigration situation we have in Sweden, but there are immigrants I like. It's like, even when I am kind of racist and sexist, but it's like, but I'm not really, you know, because why, how could I feel like that also then? Long story short, from this point, I hit rock bottom in life and I started having daily panic attacks, and I was just forced to change through a story I've told many times on this channel. When I came out on the other side, I'd gained so much love from within that now I looked at all of this in a completely different way. Like, yeah, some facts about society and things that should change were the same, but how I felt about it. And what I noticed and what I learned was that the reason for my misfortune was not what I always thought, that, oh, this fucking feminist, politically correct, blah, 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 society. I would be totally happy if society wasn't crazy. Of course, society, the environment plays a role, but clearly when I suddenly was happy and felt content and this love from within, clearly it wasn't really the outside world that might have contributed to me ending up in a place. But at a point as an adult, when you have to take responsibility, it was me not fucking facing and doing anything about trying to improve my life that kept me unhappy. It was actually me all along, right? And now, when I can look at things outside of my ideological and emotional lenses, right, I can see that people that are on the so-called other side than me, it is the exact same thing many times. It's just that from who they are, their life experiences, they found a different scapegoat, so to say. So one example of this is that in a building I don't live in anymore, but there was a woman that at the time she was 70 or 71 years old, and she had this illness, made it really tough on her, that pretty much she could get really, really big pains in the body. It was a real disease, okay, because I know there are some like made up like this, but I could tell, okay, and she fought very hard for it, that she would get these pains, sometimes so much headache and stuff that she would just have to lie down. But she did everything in her power to go on little walks, eat a healthy diet, and train train in the gym. So that's in the gym in our building was where I ran into her sometimes. And so I like her. She's quite insightful. I can hear she fights hard for her thing. And then I can tell that she feels like belittled in her life, that everyone looks at her because of this condition as this fucking useless little woman that can't do much for herself. And you're so lucky you have your husband, I won't say his name now. And I could tell that, yeah, she loved her husband and he was good, helpful for her, but she did so much by herself. It wasn't like, oh, she'd be just completely nothing without this man. So I could tell she had some resentment towards people and stuff like from this. And then at some point she went on about, pretty much I just understood that she thought someone was racist and sexist and something about feminism. And so at this point, back in the day, when I would have identified with a side, it would be like, enemy detected, feminist spotted, and I will, project all this shit on her that I think a person is. But now, knowing her and myself not identifying with anything like that, it's very easy to see that, okay, I can see she's a great woman, great old lady, that I can see why she's bitter over certain things. And okay, this is the scapegoat she found. And there was a point when because I know her already, I know we have most important things in common, so that she now happens to take a stance for something that's like officially feminism as a label, that doesn't change anything in how I look at her. So when I respond to her, I say something that's a bit dismissive of feminism, and I can see that in her. And she, first of all, she wants to explain to me like, oh, I'm not the kind that hates men. It's like, no, I know, Lisa, I wouldn't be talking to you if I thought you were hating men. I understand completely. And she wants to argue about this. And it's like, because this is what they trick us into doing when we identify with some fucking false identity like this. I can see how she's now looking for the fight, for where the disagreement is, for where we're enemies, because it's like we're programmed to do this when we've identified with this side and this is the bad side. But eventually she also, because she is quite an insightful lady, that she actually got it like, okay, no, so we kind of see eye to eye on things. It's just that you don't have, we have similar views on the practical how things actually are, but you happen to not call yourself a feminist. I'm sure I even made this point to her, that see, that's just your scapegoat you found, and I get it. But you see how so many people like me and this lady that actually get along really well and have a lot in common, we're going to end up looking at each other as enemies if we've identified with a camp, and that therefore there is an enemy camp, This is the divide and conquer tactic in play. And so this is just what came to mind around all of this with Charlie Kirk's passing. That's not just a passing, right? It's an assassination. That is the case. Whoever did that, it's most likely a case of someone that thinks that the evil conservatives that are ruining everything and they're trying to restrict women's rights like this and whatever they've been indoctrinated to believe, and then actually thinking that it's the right thing to do, to kill a spokesman for a thing like that. The real enemy is laughing all the way to the bank. And yeah, of course, there's going to have to be a degree, with a message like this, it's not that I want to say that, well, when other people, you want to be good and you realize this, that I'm telling you, and other people don't, and they attack you, that you just have to take it, submit, surrender to them. No, absolutely not. I would be the first one to very literally fight back against evil, but really the big battle here is the spiritual warfare, and actually us human beings, if we left and right-wing people, so-called, white and black, immigrant and non-immigrant, men and women, if we could stop fucking fighting and pointing fingers at each other and try to understand each other and come together, we couldn't be manipulated into this. We couldn't have things like this, because again, the people that divide and conquer us, they want this. They either directly want certain things that happen when we, get hurt and kill each other and stuff, or at the very least they do not care because it's a necessary means, something that has to happen in order for them to reach their goals, and they just want to distract us so we don't realize that, hey, we're actually fine. We pretend to care about you, but we're actually fine with all of you dying and hurting each other and being in pain. But look at those. There's a picture I remember where it's like a king standing on top of his castle, and he has like his advisor on the side, and people are walking towards him with a torch and pitchforks. Fucking forks. I've made this the fork and the fucking torch. And he asked his advisor, like, what should I do? And the advisor is like, it's easy. Just convince the people with the forks that the people with torches want to take their forks. You know, this is what happens to us all the time. So, you know, it's not to say that all ideas and ideologies are equally right. I definitely don't believe so. But however, I can see everyone as a human being, whether they have opinions and views, morals closer to mine or not. I'll actually feel bad for the person that's like, oh, left wing or whatever should be in opposition to me, because I don't really identify with it. But, you know, I'm sorry you are so deceived. I'm sorry you're so full of hate that you could be deceived in that way. I feel for you. I love you. I want better for you. I guess it's like I don't have a finishing point, but around this with Charlie Kirk, I would warn you towards like seeing now even more the left wing or whatever as the enemy, and look at why these things happen in the first place. And the person that is more like left wing, like would consider themselves someone that wouldn't agree with Charlie Kirk, you should absolutely take a stance against evil. You know, it needs to be the good versus the evil. And sometimes some of us good people, we think we are on different teams because we've been tricked into this with all these fucking fake divisions, right? And there are, on our so-called team, there's always bad, evil people as well. Good versus evil, that's a true battle. Don't forget it. And I think Charlie Kirk, even though he's clearly associated with one side, I would say that he is associated with the good in the sense that, you know, I can just see someone that fought for what he thinks, whether it would be right or wrong, like correct, what he thinks is right and truth, and doing it in a fair way, just wanting to have discourse, have his ideas challenged and challenge other people's ideas. You know, anyone that approach, even if they have completely different worldview than me in the end, if this is how they go about things, I can still see them as a good person that just happened to be wrong about certain things, you know. I'll end on this note. All human beings on this earth are actually brothers and sisters. We're supposed to come together, help each other grow, lift each other up, look out for one another, okay? And that's even when someone has gone astray into evil, thinking wrong. It should be the absolute last resort to resort to violence, war, and fighting like that. That should never be the go-to. You should always understand that a person driven by evil, they weren't that way intrinsically. That's something that's happened to them. You were being tricked by evil as well, if you think. If you look at these people as not your fellow human being, it's just a last resort. When the lesser evil is to actually, literally fight someone, yeah, because, you know, they will hurt. If you don't, you know, it's like self-defense, right? But up until that point, as humans, we should try to understand each other and point the finger where it rightfully belongs, okay? And it's not the person next to you, it's not your neighbor. It's the person that made you think that your neighbor is actually your enemy. Okay, guys, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. My thoughts and prayers goes to the family. Actually, it's so horrible to think about the little kids just having to understand that dad is gone. Why do I don't have a dad? Not just because things happen, like, oh, an accident, he fell down, or he was hit by a car or something. No, because when he was out doing his work, very brave and honest work, someone killed him. That's something that's very difficult. You know, it's not easy to accept evil in this world. That's why evil creates more evil, right? And that's why it has to, though. No matter how hard it is, evil must be met with love. Because evil just creates more evil. If you let it get to you, now you're gonna do evil to someone else. You have to create a better cycle. And I'm so terribly sorry for his family. Hopefully they'll understand that their dad was a great man, that they were lucky for him to be their father, that he was taken away from them way too soon, and it's not fair. It was evil, the very same evil he was fighting, and they should be proud. Peace, guys.